What's up everyone? We had a bit of a break here, but today it's time for the third video in our Fortification Guide series. In this one, we'll be talking about the offensive fortifications. I'll cover the turrets and both types of sentries, giving some strats about each, and discussing my preferences. As a reminder, as an engineer you should always have the repair boost card on. A maxed out card will make repairs cost 60% less overall. For this reason, all of the repair and refill values I have listed here correspond to an engineer with this card fully upgraded. Also, don't forget the scale I'm using for damage here. To baseline results, I'm using a Scion Buzzkill on Casual, Wave 47. Any damage values I give in this video is just a percentage of their health. In Horde, we have no way to get the actual values, so this is just going to have to do. Alright, so let's start with the turrets. I've gone over these previously in the Salvo vs Turrets video I did, but here's a quick recap. Here I've got the cost, health, and ammo of each of the levels. By firing some shots and refilling, I found that the refill cost this much. This means that each bullet costs 2 energy. Interestingly enough, this 2 energy per bullet thing is consistent across all of the levels of turrets. When testing damage against Scion, the turrets did this much damage per shot. Now, with these values, we have the damage per energy, based on reload cost. As you can see, as you level it up, it becomes better, except levels 3 and 4 are the same. So now let's add in the rate of fire. This leads us to have a damage per second output of this much. And here's where the clear difference is. It's now clear that the turrets get significantly better as you level it up. Also, don't forget that your damage can be much higher if you're playing as a properly equipped heavy. Oh, and for the sake of completeness, let's throw this up there. All of the turrets have about 180 degrees of rotation. I think it might actually be slightly less than that, but let's just call it 180. So now that we have the stats out of the way, let's discuss the use of the turret. The turret is by far my favorite fortification to use. It can get boring, but it's crazy effective. These should be some of the first things you build and the first things you upgrade. As shown by the stats, they build up damage really quickly, and having 4 people all shooting them at once is even crazier. Also, don't forget that in the past I ran some tests on incoming damage. It turns out that the turrets actually reduce the amount of incoming damage you take. It doesn't stack with the cover boost card as many believed, but it does in fact reduce damage significantly. In the last video, I talked about recycling decoys or fences. I wouldn't really advise doing that with turrets. I mean, you can, it's just as efficient energy-wise, but with the amount of health they have, and with the little aggro, it makes it so that they just take a while to get destroyed. It's just as efficient, it just takes a little bit longer. Now, let's take a second to discuss the cards for the turrets. The engineer has the turret cost card and the turret health cards. Turret damage and turret capacity are for the heavy, and overall fortification health is available for any class. I would always recommend running the turret cost card on your engineer and the turret damage card on your heavy. The 2 health boost cards don't really do too much for me. If I had to choose one, it would be for overall health, but in general I never find myself needing these cards. I'd rather use the card slot for something more useful. Turret capacity is nice, but it means your heavy needs to buy or upgrade the turret. Some teams have a strat of letting the heavy do this for the final upgrade. This way, you get the discounts up to level 4, but then once you're on level 4, you get a nice ammo upgrade. That level 4 upgrade is really expensive though, and with a good engineer you shouldn't really run into any ammo issues. For that reason, I tend to ignore that card as well. That's all there really is to say about the turrets. They're great, and the higher level ones are even better, so use them. Now, let's take a look at the sentries. We're going to start off with the shock sentry. As a quick rundown, here are some stats. They'll cost you this much, have this much health, have this much ammo, and cost you this much to reload. This shows us that at all levels, you pay a consistent 9 energy per shot. Testing damage was a bit difficult, but it seems that for all levels, you're looking around 2.6 damage per shot against the Scion Buzzkill. To me, this seems a little off, and maybe had to do with the range, but this is what the numbers were showing, so that's what we'll go with. So with this, we see that there's a consistent damage per energy. Up next, I went frame by frame to get the number of shots per second. These are a bit confusing. The rate of fire seemed to be all over the place with these things, but these are my best guesses right now. From what I can tell, the sentry won't shoot the same target until after the stun effect has worn off. Because of this, the sentry is much more effective against a group rather than a single person. The rate of fires I have shown here are essentially when there's a big group and the sentry just keeps firing. So this is essentially the max rate of fire that the sentry would have. So now, with the rate of fire and damage per shot, we can get the damage per second. You can see that this is just crazy low compared to the turret. That's because These just simply aren't effective at putting out damage. They do, however, have a nice stun effect, and that's where they become somewhat useful. The last few stats I recorded were about the range. Using the blocks on checkout, I was able to measure the range and use geometry to figure out the field of view. For anyone curious, the main blocks on checkout are about 2 feet by 2 feet, so I was easily able to figure out the range and use some simple geometry to figure out the field of view. So as you can see by the damage output and the range of these things, they don't put too much damage downrange, but they can do so from a pretty nice distance. For this reason, my team rarely uses them. When we do use them though, we try to place them out of the way, and we try to place them somewhere where they're going to be hitting those boom shots and drop shot scions. Because of the range, these things can easily be placed near the back of the base or behind some cover somewhere, and still easily have a nice view of the enemies. Alrighty, so time for the last fortification, the Kinetic Sentry. My team doesn't use these much, besides boosting lobbies, but many people really love using them. Let's take a look at some stats. Here we have the cost, health, the ammo, and how much it costs to refill. It's pretty easy to see by these numbers that it costs 1 energy per bullet. Testing to get the damage per shot gave us this. As you can see, the damage increases significantly as you level these guys up. The damage per energy is also pretty simple to get, especially being that each bullet's only 1 energy. All levels seem to have the same rate of fire, and that's 20 shots per second. This gives us this much damage per second. This is better than any shock sentry, but it's still complete garbage compared to any other weapon you're going to be having. So to complete these stats, once again here's the angle and range of each of them. Once again, I just did this on checkout. There's nothing really special here, but there's one thing I found that's kind of interesting. As you move from level 1 to 2, it actually seems that the angle decreases ever so slightly. I'm not really sure why that is, but oh well, it's a pretty small change. Alright, so how do we use these? Well, like I said, my team mainly uses them for speedruns. Besides that though, we sometimes use them to guard some areas on the side, like maybe these stairs on Reclaimed. If you have a nice team set up, it's easy to complete all of the waves by just sitting back and letting these little guys do all the work for you. The reason my team doesn't normally do this though, is because we find it more efficient to save up our energy. Instead of spending it all on these sentries, we use it for hammer strikes or sniper strikes near the last few waves. But while that's what my team does, there are a lot of teams out there that love using the sentries, and in the end, it really doesn't make that much difference. It's all just about your team's personal preference. So one of the most asked questions about sentries right now is about leveling up the Fabricator. Previously, I discussed using decoys, as that's what my team does. Well, every fortification is just as efficient, as long as you have the correct cards on, that is. Many people love to use the sentries, and honestly, they're probably one of the best to do it with. They put out some damage before they die, and they cost more. So while it's just as efficient, you don't need to take quite as many trips back and forth from the Fabricator. So yeah, use whatever you want, they're all just as efficient. Let's talk skill cards for a bit. Just like the turret, I wouldn't really recommend the Fortification health cards, but it doesn't really hurt in the end. The sentries are actually pretty weak. The main cards to talk about though are sentry capacity, cost, and speed. Obviously, if you're using a lot of sentries, the sentry cost card is a no-brainer. The capacity card can be really nice if you're using a lot of sentries. Not only do you get the bonus free ammo each time you upgrade it, but you also allow your engineer a lot more time to refill mid-wave. Sentry speed seems like it would be nice, as it's essentially just decreasing the time to kill. However, because sentries like to continue shooting for a brief period after killing someone, this just ends up wasting a lot more ammo. The time to kill decrease is nice, but it really shouldn't make too much of a difference in the end. So if you're running sentries, my suggestions would be use the cost card. If you have a lot of sentries, use the ammo card, and just plain ignore the speed card. The last thing that I wanted to go over with the fortifications is the way that they're upgraded. As with all fortifications, you should repair them before upgrading. When you upgrade them, any missing health is tacked onto the price of the upgrade. However, this doesn't account for the repair boost card that you might have on. This is really dumb, but that's the way it is, so make sure you repair the health or else you're not going to get that repair bonus. On the other hand though, ammo is free in an upgrade. For this reason, I normally try to use most of the ammo in a turret or sentry before upgrading it. This just gives you the most bang for your buck. If you're missing both health and energy, you're going to want to find that sweet spot. There's going to be some middle ground between the two where you'll be best to upgrade it. In the end, it doesn't really make that much difference, and it changes every time depending on the ratio of health to ammo, but in general, just repair the health a bit and then upgrade it. don't worry about refilling ammo before upgrading. Okay, so we've covered the stats and some general info about all of them, but how do they stack up? Well, let's look at the two most important stats. We have damage per second, and we have damage per energy. DPS tells us how quickly we're going to be able to kill enemies. DPE will tell us how efficiently our energy is being spent. As you can see, the turret wins in all aspects at every level. This just furthers the case that the turret is an insanely dominant force. Let's not throw out the other options just yet though. The sentries have some perks that just aren't possible with the turret. For one, the stun from the shock sentry is actually quite useful. It stuns any non-boss type enemy and will greatly decrease the rate of incoming damage. The other aspect about these is that you can set many of them up together and you don't need someone manning them, as long as you have an engineer refilling them, that is. Sure, it's going to take more than 5 sentries to add up to the DPS of a single turret. However, you're able to set and forget with these things. They'll put out decent damage across many different enemies, and because you don't need to control them, they're great for watching the low priority areas. And that's going to do it for our fortification guide. Hopefully you all learned something from these. I know I sure learned a lot from all the testing, though it's sort of unfortunate that we're forced to test all of this ourselves, rather than, having the exact values published by TC. It's quite time consuming trying to figure this all out, and in the end, I don't even know if I got it all right. I did a lot of testing and did the best I could, but who's to say if it's right or not? Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to drop it a like. Also, remember to subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our content, and check out all of our other Horde videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.